everybody. My name is Stacy Rosembaum, and I am an assistant professor of biological anthropology at the University of Michigan. I work on social behavior and hormones in mountain gorillas. My study population lives in Volcanoes National Park, which crosses the borders of Rwanda, Democratic Republic of Congo, and Uganda. In addition to studying mountain gorillas, I also do some work on baboons, and in the past I also have studied silky sifakas in Madagascar, and I got my start in primatology in Chuck Snowden's lab at the University of Wisconsin, studying cotton-top tamarins. My experiences at University of Madison were absolutely where I discovered primatology and really where I discovered animal behavior more generally. I was a kid who grew up on a pseudo farm, essentially, in Wisconsin, and I had always been very interested in animal behavior. I had every kind of pet that you can possibly imagine, and I was always fascinated by animals, but I didn't really know that studying animal behavior was a career option. At that time, everybody around me just sort of assumed that if you were interested in animals and you wanted to work with animals for a career, that you were going to become a vet. And that didn't really appeal to me, but I didn't know what else to do. And so I spent a bunch of time in college taking, classes kind of in a bunch of different departments, which was a really valuable experience. And then during my junior year, I took a class called Introduction to Primate Behavior with Dr. Chris Coe. From the very first day of that class, I knew that that was what I wanted to do. I was just fascinated by it. I was fascinated by the animals themselves, and I was so excited about the idea that this was something that you could potentially get paid to do, something you could have a career in. I went and talked to Dr. Coe right away, and I got very lucky because he suggested that I go talk to Chuck Snowden, who of course had a cotton-top tamarin lab on the 5th floor of the building. I did. I went and had an interview, and I was very fortunate to get a research assistant position in Chuck's lab. That was where I learned how to collect hormone data via urine collection, how to take care of the animals, and then maybe most importantly or most influentially, if that's a word, for me, that's where I learned how to collect data on their behavior. I used my experience as a research assistant collecting behavioral data to eventually kind of transition to doing an honors thesis in Chuck's lab. And that was my first experience with designing a research question and methods to answer it. I'll be perfectly honest, it was 25 years ago, and I don't remember as much about that process as I probably should, but I do know that it involved a lot of time in Chuck's office talking to him about how we would go about answering a question that I found interesting. The thing that I wanted to focus on and did end up writing a thesis about is the divergence of behavior in male and female cotton-top tamarins as they get older. So when young cotton-tops are born, males and females behave very similarly, and then of course there is some divergence in their behavior as they get older. And so what I ended up doing was watching twin tamarins, male and female twins, at various ages across the course of their lives, to try to figure out when do we start to see sex differences emerge. This ended up being an incredibly valuable experience for me because the senior thesis ended up being a very valuable experience for me because it was the first time that I had kind of done end-to-end work on a research question, right? And I had a tremendous amount of help, obviously, from Chuck, but I think that's very typical for people's first research project. As I mentioned, I study mountain gorillas, which of course are one of the world's most endangered primate species. There are only a little over 1,000 of them in the whole world. I am not a conservation biologist, and conservation is not a central part of my research program. But when you work with a species like gorillas, you, like it or not, are involved in conservation work. Some of that is just simply via my work at the field site. So we know from various people's studies that having long-term primate field sites is good for primate conservation, that having scientists on the ground every day really assists with conservation. So that's one way that I participate in conservation. But another, more sort of direct way is that I also do a lot of going and talking to children about conservation efforts. I talk to kids, especially elementary school kids in the United States, about what mountain gorillas are, why they're special, the threats to mountain gorilla conservation. But then, more importantly than that, I also talk to kids in Rwanda as well. Children in Rwanda often know very little about mountain gorillas, in spite of the fact that they're growing up very close to them. And they often don't realize that not everybody in the world has mountain gorillas. And so one of the things that the organization that I work with has really sought to do is kind of instill a sense of pride in young Rwandans about the fact that they have this, these amazing animals essentially living in their backyard that people from all over the world will pay a lot of money to come and see. And so via those routes, I am definitely involved in primate conservation. How has my scientific background influenced my life? How has it not? Might be an easier question to answer. So this career has taken me all over the world. I have lived in Madagascar, I've lived in Rwanda, I've lived in California, I now live in Michigan. All of that moving was all about my career in primatology. I've been to so many different countries and gotten to meet so many interesting people and see so many different species because of this particular career choice. It is difficult for me to imagine my life had I chosen something different, because I think it would have inevitably just ended up being very different. It's unless I picked some other job that also involved a tremendous amount of travel, and specifically kind of wildlife focused travel, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to do all those things and to work with the many really interesting people that I've been able to work with over the years. As far as what my advice would be to students who are interested in primatology and conservation, so what I just mentioned about moving all over the world, and kind of traveling all over the world, it is true that primatology often involves such things. Not always, but often. And I think it is worth thinking very carefully about what you yourself value, not only right now, but what you might value for yourself in the future. This is a career that can take a tremendous amount of your time, and it takes a tremendous amount of personal investment. You're never going to get rich doing this. But there are lots and lots of different ways to be a primatologist. You can work for conservation NGOs. You can work as a research scientist. You can work in zoos. There's many, many more options than I initially appreciated. And I think it's really important to go out there and to talk to people who are working in these different fields, and to not necessarily assume that you know right off the bat what it is you want to do. Get yourself some experience participating in a lot of different kinds of things. Fieldwork is not for everybody. Working in a zoo is not for everybody. Working in conservation is not for everybody. But there are lots of different types of jobs involved in primatology. And so sampling from those and talking to as many people as possible, I think, is a really, really valuable experience for somebody who aspires to be a primatologist of any kind, frankly. If any of the students at any career stage who are listening to this are interested in getting in touch with questions about careers in primatology of any sort, I am always more than happy to talk. You can find me at the University of Michigan's website, or on my personal website, which is primatebehaviorlab.org. There you can also find links to the bios of my graduate students and my postdoc. I'm sure that they would probably be happy to talk to people as well. Between us, we have experience at a lot of different field sites around the world and working in primate conservation and primatology in different ways. So please do not hesitate to reach out. Thank you again for the opportunity to participate in this, and I look forward to hearing from some of you. Thank you.